Hi axe people, Jerry here. I decided to do a video on my 3 favorite hatchets. And by hatchets I mean one-hand axes. I actually have quite a bit more than these, but these are the 3 that I use and like the best out of all my vintage axes. And the reason I like vintage axes is they were made in a different way. Oh, say 50 years or more ago, is they had a blade forge welded to a softer steel around the eye and on the pole. That's why you see so many starting to mushroom, but that was advantageous in a couple ways. One is you could make it real thin right around where the handle is, so you could get a better wedge and there'd be some resiliency when you chopped. It would be a little bit easier on the hand in a subtle way. And of course the high carbon steel bit was required for sharpness and edge retention and ease of sharpening. But I'll go through each one individually as why I think it's my favorite. This first one is my one that I carry in a day pack if I'm out in the woods and camping or doing things for the day. This is a True Temper tomahawk. I made the sheath out of an old boot with the old boot lace and boot lace eyes. I just cut out the sides of the boot. Makes a simple sheath. But the axe is, I like all these from a design standpoint. Probably more than any actual cutting value. If I don't want to say that other axes are inferior to these. These just appeal to me in mostly in a design standpoint. This one is called the True Temper Kelly True Temper Tomahawk, and the reason they called it that is, of course, it looks like a tomahawk. You see the curve, inverse curve here on the top. Very long pole, keeps it well balanced for a straight handle, very straight handle as far as hatchets goes. It doesn't have much of a recurve, just a slight one. Narrow blade. It just has a real fine feel, real good for chopping, and it's in pretty good shape. All these axes cost me less than $20 each, shipped on eBay. And you have to fix them up sometimes. All these required a little bit of re-wedging or paint removed. I especially like paint on a handle because that means I'm going to get a hatchet really cheap or an axe really cheap, because splotchy paint on a handle, of course, doesn't appeal to a lot of people, but it's the easiest thing to fix. This one is a Walters axe company. I'm not sure what they called this, but Walters axe company from Hull, Quebec had some interesting designs. I've actually had several of them over the years, and this one I kept. None of these are what I'd call collector quality condition. They're all user quality, which is what I want because I'm using these. This one I use at the permanent camp here for firewood kindling on fires, campfires. I had to re-wedge this, had a number of screws and nails I took out and put wood in, and the handle split a little bit, but it's still holding. And since it is original handle, it's got this round knob, which I really like from a style standpoint. Again, I wanted to retain that, so we're keeping this handle as long as possible. But this one is a tomahawk pattern again, or like a Hudson Bay almost. Got the notch here. You know, if I want to make feather sticks next to the campfire, you can get your hand right up underneath and push with it, carve with it. Another finely balanced. You can see it was yellow paint originally, which was the style back mid 20th century, early 20th century. All the axes were painted, but the paint wears off. Some of them were blued actually, but these were painted. My last axe, this one I use strictly for maple syrup kindling when I make maple syrup in the spring. just so it gets used. This is a Collins Legitimus. You're not going to be able to read that, maybe you are. Legitimus was an earlier mark, probably before World War II. I'm not sure when they stopped using it, but they started using it because Collins axes were so good that they were getting a lot of counterfeits. So they trademarked the Legitimus crown with an arm sticking out, which is light stamp. It didn't get all in there, but very fine axe. This one has pretty much the whole profile left. It hasn't been sharpened. And as far as Legitimus axes go, there's quite a few around, but hatchets aren't real easy to find. This one has a nice old handle. I don't know if it's original, but it's a good handle. It was banged on and fuzzed out here and cracked, so I just sanded it down. I took all the old splotchy paint from laying around in the garage off and put boiled linseed oil on it. Re-wedged the handle again, or the axe to the handle, and it's an excellent axe. So just look at the subtle shaping of this by the blacksmith, how it's narrow here at the top and narrow right here, narrowed down. These old axes, the older the axe, the less grinding marks you see. You see a little bit of grinding there, but that newer axes, from the 60s and 70s that are in this style, you'll see a lot more grinding marks where most of that's polished off on the older axes. But again, these are two-piece steel, you know, the hardened bit and a softer metal here, which makes for a relatively thin eye. You could shape it better back here. Very thin. Again, it's just a beautifully balanced and lovely axe to use. But who knows if these will be my 3 favorite next year. I'm always checking out old ones, buying new, replacing ones that I think don't live up to the new one if I find a better one. Thanks for watching.